I want to welcome all of my viewers to our first webinar series with Playing College 3. My name is Nikki King, and today is a really special day for me because my first guest is someone really close to my heart. Her name is Lynze Roos, and she is the head volleyball coach at Wofford College. And I wanted to kind of back up a little bit and go back in time and talk a little bit about your career before we get into all of the recruiting questions and how you got to where you're at now. Because I think it's really important to see how your playing career and is how you transitioned into being a collegiate coach has really cultivated such a successful program at Wofford. And I had the opportunity personally to coach Lynze her senior year in high school, which was really exciting. Just wanted to talk a little bit about what it was like for you as a player moving from high school to the collegiate level.
Was lucky enough to have a coach at the middle school level who played in college. And so she really is credited, I think, for my whole friend group, like just falling in love with volleyball. That group that played on her 7th and 8th grade teams, I think 5 of us went on to play Division I volleyball. I said I was fortunate to play at a high school that also had a lot of players that went on to the Division I and Division II levels, and just looked up to those players so much when I was younger. And it was just a cool experience to think like maybe one day I could be one of those girls.
If I recall your senior year, we had players that are now college coaches at the Division I, Division II, at all levels. That was probably one of the strongest graduation recruiting classes that I can ever remember in my time coaching.
Right, and I played for a different club all the way up to my senior year, but going into my senior year, I thought to myself, like, I really want to play with the best in the area. Mm-hmm. And so I went to the Second City tryout, and I was like, maybe, even if I DS, like, I just wanted to play with the best in the area. And, I know club is different now, and, really where I played club was based on where my parents were willing to drive me until I was able to drive myself. So that senior year, they gave me like the go ahead if I was going to drive myself to practices, that I could try out for a team that wasn't, just 10 minutes away. So I just wanted to play with like those girls. And I mean, anybody who's watching maybe from the Chicago area, I wanted to play with the Macaulay girls and see if I could hang, really, like even at the tryout, could I hang with these girls? So yeah, the girls that are still in coaching for sure. From my class, like it's just, I think because you had such a good time, it was such a good environment, such supportive coaches. I think the whole experience was so positive, and that's, I think, as I went through my whole college career, I had a really positive experience. And so I tell girls that I recruit, like, this should be the best 4 years of your life. It shouldn't be a grind. I mean, yeah, there's days that might be grind, but this is what you work for, and so yeah. I think that's why maybe so many of us got into it, is because we had such positive experiences.
Yeah, that's great. How did you get there? And tell us a little bit about your recruiting senior year and some of the things that you went through and things that went through your head as you were preparing to make that transition.
So I was a terrible recruit, and I can really appreciate what the girls are going through now, because I had the mistake of someone telling me, like, when you go on that campus, you'll know that you're in the right spot. So I just kept walking on campuses thinking, like, the clouds were going to open and like angels were going to sing, that I was in the right spot. And I went to a lot of camps, like starting probably my freshman summer and then going into junior year, just went to a couple camps, not necessarily camps of schools that I was going to maybe be recruited by, but was coached by a lot of coaches that then recruited me from seeing me at camps. And so that was probably the way that I got seen the most early on. And, I took my 5 official visits, because back in that cycle, which is now it's getting closer to looking like this again.
It sure is.
A decision wasn't made before my senior year. And so going into senior fall, we were, as teammates, we were all also trying to figure out how to not miss high school like tournaments and go on these visits. So I took my 5 visits. And Butler was one of my first visits, and I told the coaches no. I just thought it was too small. My high school was 4,000 students. Butler at the time was 3,800, and I thought I couldn't possibly go to a college smaller than my high school. And just, I don't think it's the right fit. And so they were like, okay, and parted on good terms. Like, if anything changes, let us know. And so I took my other visits and dragged it out all the way into the spring, and signing was in March. And I remember my parents were eating dinner, and I went down to the laundry room and called the coach at Butler and said, this is, and they were not one that sent me an NLI. And I called Sharon Dingman and said, I don't know if you're still looking for an outside hitter, but I've changed my mind and I'd like to come. And she was like, what? What changed your mind? And I was like, I think it was because it was my first visit that I had nothing really to compare it to. I loved the girls. I mean, it was a great academic school. It was a good distance from home. But at that time when I took that visit, I think I didn't know why was I saying no, because it was smaller than my high school. Like, that's ridiculous. So anyway, she said, yeah, we still have a spot. And I came upstairs and I told my parents that I was going to Butler, and they were like, what is going on? So, and it all worked out to be amazing and the best decision I could have made.
So let's talk a little bit about your high school career, your senior year. So you were about 5'9", 6 rotation outside hitter. You by far one of the most highly IQ'd players that I ever had the opportunity to work with. You went on to play Division I volleyball and completely dominated your conference at Butler University.
So I think the biggest trick is I never thought I was undersized. So you got to have the mentality of like,
right?
You think big, right? And so I loved playing against the bigger blockers who you could tool and be slimy and, frustrate them. But then also when I came against someone like you as a smaller setter over there, I liked being matched up with you because I could also do things like, so it was crafty. And so I look for kids that think that way, are thinking about the game. And I think an undersized kid has to. If you're always the biggest kid, you're not being challenged the same way as maybe being undersized outside. And I mean, one of my favorite middles are like those 5'11" fast twitch middles that they hit the ball before the other kid, the 6'3" kid, has even jumped.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of like the style that is exciting for me.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your coaching career. You were at Lynze University, a Division II school. You are probably the most decorated coach in the history of Lynze program. So tell us a little bit about how you got there and what the transition was like moving into a Division I program.
So after Butler, I graduated with an education degree, 9th and 12th grade English. And so, and was coaching. And so I coached club, I coached high school in Indianapolis. And I had some really good players, some really high level players. And because they were being recruited, I had a lot of coaches, college coaches still coming into my gym as a high school coach. And so a lot of these people were still really familiar to me. And one of those coaches was Michelle Durbin, who was an assistant coach at the University of Alabama at the time, recruiting this middle that I had. And so as they went through the recruiting process, Michelle got the offer to be the head coach at Stanford. And so when she got that job, she asked me if I would consider coming to be an assistant for her. Well, feelers out there to a handful of schools, and I had a couple of interviews, and Lynn just seemed like under the radar, like great school, hadn't had a lot of success, didn't have a lot of resources before I was hired. And the woman who hired me, she was moving into the first female AD role. It was just really championing women's athletics at Lynn. And it just seemed like a really great opportunity, and timing was great. And so I took that job, and I was there for 9 years. And when you say 9 years, like that sounds crazy, but we moved down there and had both my children down there. And again, with a female ID, it was the most ideal situation. She was so supportive of me and raising the kids and having them in the gym. And I had pictures of both my kids in the little, like the walker thing, like just running around the gym. So all those kids that played for me at Lynn, they know my kids pretty well. And my kids think that a gym, like, doesn't everybody have a gym that they go to all the time and run around? So, and just with our kids being at the age that they were 2 and 4 when we moved to South Carolina. And really what we were just seeking is a smaller town kind of feel, similar to like where I grew up. Wofford had a coaching opening, and the AD, who's also from Chicago, called Michelle and said, do you know anybody who'd be interested? And she said, well, I don't know if Lynze would leave, but you should call her. So I came up here like July. It was a late hire, and I knew it was a great fit for my husband and I and our family. So he moved for the 4th time for my job, sight unseen. and just it's been such a great fit. Wofford's such a cool community, and like just the upstate of South Carolina is just such a great fit for us. Like you can be in the mountains in an hour, you can be in the beach at the beach in 3 hours, mountain biking everywhere. Like it's just a very active area, and so it was a great fit.
Tell me a little bit more about why you love Wofford so much. What's special there?
So it's small, and I think that I'm a small school person. I'm going to be at 1,800 students this fall, and that means that every class is like 14 to 15 students. You might have one class that might have 22 or something like that, but you're not going to find a lecture hall on campus that is an active lecture hall. And I know that's intimidating to some kids, but that's what made my education special, is like those professors knew me. And when I mentioned like 3 years later when I went to graduate school, I had to have professor recommendations. I mean, how many schools can you go back to and ask for a recommendation 3 years after you've graduated? I don't know. I think that the small school setting it just fits me. That's why it's special. Now, what's cool and unique about it is even though we're only 16 to 1,800 students, we're on 123 acres. So it doesn't feel like you're in this tiny little setting. Like the campus is a registered arboretum. And so you walk through campus and you feel like you're in a park. It has that like academic feel. The main building was built on campus in 1864. And so like there's classrooms that people have been learning in that long. So there's like these classrooms that still have a chalkboard and the wooden seats and stuff. And they keep it that way because it's like, it's part of the experience. But then you look at our facilities, and our facilities are amazing. We play in a $52 million arena. And there's no, I mean, technology wise, like the girls can walk into the locker room, put on their Bluetooth. Each of their lockers has like their charger and all this kind of stuff in it. Like we have the bells and whistles of a big time Division I program, but then we have the academic standards and challenges that like these kids want, maybe comparable to like an Ivy, so you really get the best of all worlds, I think.
So what do you think the difference is from a recruiting strategic standpoint from a Division II program to a Division I? What was maybe your biggest challenge with that moving into the Division I level?
The scholarship structure is significantly different at Division II than it is Division I. At Lynn, I was fully funded. I still could stretch my scholarship dollars, where at and when I say that, like with academic monies and things like that.
Right, you would combine it.
Yes, yeah. And so at the Division I level, there's not as much of that. And so I'm not a fully funded program, but I don't maybe have as much wiggle room where like I knew the standards at Lynn were kind of like, if you're at this GPA or at this test score, you automatically get this. But with Wofford being a little bit more selective, there's not a firm, like if you have a 31 ACT, you're definitely getting this. It just really depends on the the applicants for the year. So I have to be a little bit more patient with that. But across the board for me at Lynn, like I also wanted the best student athletes on that campus. Like I was gonna recruit the same type of kid, but now at Wofford I have to really change and go even a higher step up academically, because I just know if a kid isn't into school, doesn't like school, that they're gonna be stressed, because it's hard. And so if they're stressed about school, they're gonna be stressed about volleyball, and it's not gonna be a good environment.
So let's talk about COVID-19 for a moment and this crazy unprecedented time that we have been in. I know for myself, with my clients and my followers, it's been just the unknown has been driving all of us a little bit crazy. And I'm sure that you are very much looking forward to getting your team on campus and back training and getting your fall season going. And without having the ability to really have recruited during this last club season, and then having to prepare for the unknown fall season, how has that affected your recruiting?
I mean, we've relied a lot on video, and
Okay.
then starting next week we'll be able to get on the phone with kids and start to build relationships as far as that goes. We were in a fortunate situation that we did commit to 21s before COVID. And so we're still looking for a 21, but I think that took a lot of the pressure off of like that, oh my goodness, what am I going to do kind of thing. But the more we even talk about the 22s, and I met with my staff this past week, it's just like everybody's in the same boat. So the last thing you want to do is just make this like crazy decision just because you feel like, well, last year I had a kid committed at this time. This whole class is going to have to be patient.
Mhm.
Coaches hopefully can be patient, can be, because the last thing you want to do is one, like take a kid sight unseen, like they haven't been on your campus. And now there are unique situations where kids maybe have been to camp and have been in conversation before the recruiting rule change prior, and so I think there's certain circumstances, but otherwise I just hope all coaches and kids can like take a deep breath and not feel like pressured into something that isn't the right fit. But that's how we're approaching it right now with the 22s, is just to like really work on building as much of a relationship as we can through technology and connecting them as much as they can with our campus. And I think most schools are kind of stepping up and making sure that there's virtual tours out there, not just the one from 5 years ago, but trying to like get them to have an idea of what we're really like. And it's tough because like you think, okay, so I have 3 staff members. I'm fortunate, and right now we probably have about 40 kids on Monday that are trying to set up calls with us, and that's not necessarily the 40 kids that we're trying to set calls up with. So there's there's like 80 people who are we're trying to contact these kids, but these are kids we saw early that we like. And now there's 40 kids that are saying like, I really want to set up a call on Monday. Well, how between 3 people are you going to have 80 phone calls on Monday? And me remember, did I just say that? Or did I, who are you? You just don't want it to be a robot. I want to connect with these kids. So I think that's the challenge for us right now, is to, one, make sure if we don't call a kid on Monday that kid doesn't think that we're not interested. It's just, is it humanly possible? Like, what can we have a 5-minute conversation and you really start to get to know me? Or would I rather have 5-10-minute conversations with kids? Like just trying to figure out how to make it worthwhile and not necessarily turn anybody off, but feel like we're doing something instead of just like checking a box.
Lynze, I'm so glad you brought that up, because we're talking right now about kids that understand the process, have been reaching out, have been sending out their videos, emailing coaches, doing their research, right? There's so many kids out there. I mean, you're still talking about sophomores in high school. There's a slew of kids that haven't even done that yet. So, and
Sure.
Without having tournaments during this last club season, you've got so many kids still that are what I would consider under the radar. So it's interesting. And I wondered how you guys would handle phone calls if it was like you're only going to call or reach out to your top 3 that you've seen or that you plan on offering, and that's it. Or if it's okay for PSAs, potential student athletes, to reach out to you and ask to set up a phone call. And if they do that, Lynze, you have to prioritize who you're actually going to set up a phone call with, and who you're going to say, you know what, based on your video, based on your profile, it's just you're not going to be a fit for us. So how do you prioritize that?
Tough. I mean, I think that's where, as a staff, we have a recruiting coordinator who's kind of making the columns for us of and the kids that we had seen and our notes on them so that we remember, because now it feels like 100 years ago. And then trying to, from that point, like, do we really need to talk to a kid that is a 1.7 and she's not going to get in? So that's when we have to be honest about like a kid that won't have the academics. But then in my mind, I'm like, gosh, well, she has 2 years to pull it up. Like, what if she just had a really bad semester? That's my mind that thinks that. And all the while, I have 2 kids upstairs who are homeschooling. So do I also want to have a phone call where like 2 kids are running behind me and stuff? So I need to also make sure that I'm prioritizing that time so that everybody's getting their attention. I have no problem doing 6 weeks worth of phone calls.
Right.
Like that. That's right now, when we missed all this time in the gym, if there is a kid that's, under the radar and they want to, know more about Wofford, great. But what I appreciate is when they do a little work on their end too, before we get on the phone. When they say, what state are you in? I'm thinking like, oh man, okay, South Carolina. Like, that's where we're starting. And I get on their end too. I mean, they might have 55 schools contacting them. And I think I remember being on that side of it as a recruit, that my parents were like, you're going to answer this call and you're going to talk to this coach. And I was like, oh, I have no interest in going there. And they're like, this person's taking the time to call you, you're going to talk to them. You connect with a coach that maybe the school wasn't on your top 5 list, but you talk to that coach and you're like, okay, I can see 4 years of playing for this person. And that's why sometimes I think it's really tough when kids just sight unseen or like know nothing about the school and say no.
Agreed.
Like we might call that our reach kid, right? Like, okay, there's this kid who's touching 10-5 and like good academics or whatever. And sometimes we talk to a coach and the coach says, yeah, she's not interested. Like she's going Power 5 is what
Right.
I'm usually told. Like, okay, that's great. However, how do you know she doesn't like love Wofford? How do you know that she doesn't want to be pre-med and we have one of the best pre-med programs in the Southeast? So get me on the phone with this kid. Like, let her tell
Right.
me. So I don't know. It's going to be an interesting dance because I think, it's one. I mean, I don't think these kids talk on the phone that much. They text and they Insta and they TikTok, and so now
Yep.
they're going to have to learn how to speak on the phone and answer questions and
Sure.
ask questions. And I don't know. It's going to be an interesting thing for everybody. So if you have any advice, you let me know.
Well, I definitely, I tell all of my clients, throw out a wide net because you're so young. How are you supposed to know what you're looking for, what you want to do the rest of your life? A lot of them haven't had time. They try, but they're so busy training to do all this research on these on the colleges, the programs, the coaches. And, I've had so many kids, me included. I played in the Big Ten. I transferred. I was in one of those large auditorium classrooms. It was not for me. I ended up transferring to a smaller school, Loyola in Chicago, and it was a perfect fit. My whole purpose is to help kids not go through that. Transferring is not a fun process. And if you do everything up front and do your research and throw out a wide net and really get to know the programs that you're looking at potentially playing at, your success rate is going to increase at the collegiate level, both as an athlete and as a student. So, and that's my goal, is to help my kids, find the right fit. And it starts with targeting the right schools, Lynze, because, you're getting bombarded by emails and phone calls. And a lot of times these kids haven't done the research. They don't know where they fit, what level of school, what level of program. And you have to sift through that. And it saves time. It shortens the recruiting process if these kids really do their research, get somebody that's going to give them an honest opinion as to where to target. And in order for someone to do that, they've got to get to know the kid, right? So club coaches are a great resource, recruiting coordinators. And, once they figure out kind of what they're looking for and what schools would probably be interested in them, their success rate really increases. So, and I agree with you 100%. It's a difficult situation. If you have a college coach calling and, interested in one of my clients, for example, and she's, maybe already narrowed her choice to 3, I am not saying no. I always have my clients take a look at that school, research it, maybe get on at least a phone call, give it an opportunity, because you never know. I have a recruit is a Florida kid, and she originally didn't want to leave Florida, and she was not going to leave Florida. And, I started working with her freshman year, and I said, you know what, here's a few programs that are interested in you. They're in the Midwest, a little cold, but go on a visit, check it out. This is before the recruiting change. And she came back after one visit in the Midwest, and like, I guess she was one of those kids that it triggered for her on site. However, she would have never, ever even given them a chance if, her parents, her support system around her didn't say, open up the mind a little bit, be open-minded to other opportunities. You can always say no later on down the road. So I think that's really important for kids moving through this process. So Lynze, I have some clients that I'm working with right now that are very nervous about Monday rolling around, the big June 15th day. And what advice do you have or words of encouragement for those that may not get a phone call on Monday?
It's a reality because there's only so many calls we can make in the day. And there are only so many kids that we had the opportunity to see. So I wouldn't be discouraged. I would definitely reach out to coaches and let them know that you'd love to talk to them. But if they don't respond right away or call you right away, give us some time, because I think we're going to be sifting through as if the last tournament, I think the last tournament I was at, did we Visa Southeast, or maybe, no, I think it was in Orlando. I was at Sunshine.
Okay.
So I think I'm going to go through as if, June 15th, maybe last weekend was Sunshine, those kids that were freshest in my mind. But there are kids that, I think we had over 100 athletes we wanted to see at Big South that we didn't get to see. Clearly, AAUs we didn't get to see. So I think they just need to be patient, because maybe I really was focused on, or other coaches too might have been focused on, I really need a 21 at that point. And so I didn't get to a lot of 22s. And so I might be basing it off of, over 6 months ago. And there's a lot of coaches that didn't get to 22s. A lot of my colleagues that were still on 20 and 21. And so when I was going to watch 22, they were laughing at me. Like, oh, we're going to wait until second half of club season to move to that class. So I think everybody's just got to recognize it's a weird year, and be patient and don't get discouraged. And I think you can send updated video and email, like just stay consistent with it and persistent as far as the communication on your end until someone tells you, listen, we don't need your position, or we've gotten a commitment. Then you can stop contacting. Otherwise, I don't think there's anything wrong with continuing to reach out and just remember that we're human too, and we're trying to get through it. I feel like that Monday morning I'm going to open my eyes and it's going to be like nonstop for, I don't know, probably 3 weeks of just trying to get our ducks in line.
We focused a bit on the 22s because June 15th is Monday. I have a ton of fabulous 2021 kids that I'm working with, and there are so many out there that are uncommitted at this time, whose last tournament was Sunshine, was the last qualifier that we got in before COVID. And what advice do you have for them? They're unable to visit schools right now. Those that have offers can't visit schools, and some are still waiting to get offers. What advice would you have?
Be patient and know that it's going to work out. You don't have to, it's not the end of the world. Don't take the first offer you get because you think, no one's been seen and no one's been on campuses. Do your best to, I think, connect with some players at those schools. Like if you have an offer from 3 or 4 schools, you can look at their roster and see like, okay, this kid is from Florida. Find her on social media, talk to her, do something that's moving forward for you in the process while you can't be there. I know that you can find all sorts of tours and things on YouTube or whatever. And I would do that as much as you can, just to get different perspectives on it. But I think, go to the horse's mouth. Find if there's a player from your club that's at that school.
I love that.
Or even a kid from your high school. We can't direct our players to, call this kid or something like that. But if someone reaches out to them, and my girls will tell me like, oh, this girl from A5 reached out to me and said that she is interested in, I tell my players like, oh yeah, she's our #1 recruit or something like that. But we note it like, okay, that kid reached out to one of our girls to ask, do you like going to school there? Or are the coaches nice? So you feel like you're doing something instead of just waiting, because I know that that's probably what's driving these kids nuts. I think right now we all have to be patient with it. And like you're saying, hopefully fall season happens. And when these kids get into their training with their high schools or still with their clubs, like record it, send it to us. Do your own like Facebook Live of your practice. Right now, since we haven't had much to do, I watch so much video. Like every recruit, I'm like, sweet video, let's watch it. Because it keeps us, evaluating and keeps us, on top of our game. So I think that would be an important piece to it. But above all, stay patient and know that everybody's in the same boat. So,
Lynze, I can't thank you enough for being on this phone call with us. And please tell your mom and dad I said hello.
Oh my gosh, I will.
I want to wish you the best of luck this fall season. You've been doing such a great job at Wofford, and they're so lucky to have you. And again, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. So good to see you.